Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin.
Our guest today is a young social media content creator and genuine Colorado cowboy, Tucker Daubs. He is a guy that combines horses, guns, knives, and cowboying, and you can't have much more fun than that with your clothes on. So, Tucker, how are you doing today?
I am doing very good. Thank you for putting me on here.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we try to have a variety of guests, and I'm very much a gun guy, and I don't get to talk guns very much on this thing, so I'm hoping we get to do a little bit of that. We do start everybody off with our icebreaker questions, and Tucker, I don't know if you're aware, but these are for points and prizes, so you want to be on your A game here, okay?
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
If you were a Jedi, what % chance is there that you would misuse the Force?
Oh, a large % chance. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, 98% chance probably.
Morning or evening?
Morning, all the way.
Me too. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No, pineapple does not belong on pizza.
What's your pizza toppings?
Meat. All
Meat.
All kinds of meat. As much meat as you can stack on there.
I like it. All right, I customized a few of these for you. So, rifle or pistol?
Oh, well, I'd have to say rifle, but I've recently found a new love for pistols and revolvers. Just using them more, but you really can't beat a rifle.
Especially a nice little sweet saddle carbine like this, just sexy. Yep, no two ways about it. If you could have any superpower, which one would you choose?
Oh, I'd have to fly for sure.
Right there with you.
Yeah.
Yep. The real question is, if you could fly, would you still ride a horse?
Yes, I would. But I could get some pretty cool coyote hunting done with a saddle carbine and flying.
Uh-huh. All right, a knife question for you.
Okay.
Fixed blade belt knife or folder?
Fixed blade belt knife. You know, in my business, I'm wearing chaps all the time, and I gotta have a knife. Can't get to your pocket, so you got your chaps on. You gotta have a knife up on your belt and ready to go.
Do you ever think that spider in the quarter thinks of you as her roommate?
No, I don't, and I'm not too scared to get rid of it either.
So I got my best friend is he's one of those guys I could call at 2 a.m. to help me hide a body, but he is deathly afraid of spiders. So one of my favorite stories, we were playing paintball out in the woods. You ever played paintball or anything like that?
Yep.
You'd enjoy that if you haven't, So we have these big banana spiders down here in South Louisiana, like they're 3 inches across or something. And so he's trying to stalk me through the woods, but I knew right where he was the whole morning because he'd scream every time he came across one of those spiders out there. It was beautiful.
I used to also be deathly afraid of spiders. I kind of grew out of it, but man, not my deal.
How do you like your steak, and what is the preferred cut of steak?
I'm a rare guy, as rare as can be. And I know a lot of people uh, they like the really nice choice cuts, but a nice lean sirloin cooked really rare. I mean, keeps that lean. That lean, of course, helps it not be stringy or nothing. So, of course, if we're hunting though, I mean, you really can't beat the backstrap. Cut the old backstrap up, and that's pretty good too.
What is the best horse movie?
Oh, well, to be honest, I'd have to just probably pick a John Wayne movie. Probably have to go with the Cowboys with John
That's a
Wayne.
good one.
That,
Yep.
that's not really a horse-centered movie, but I guess I don't really watch horse-centered movies very much. So
Yeah, that's a good one. That's one of those movies. Like I hated Bruce Dern for 30 years. Like he played such a good villain. Just
yeah.
every time you see him, you're just like, that son of a bitch. You know, just never get over it.
Yeah, I watched an interview with him. He said he got death threats for quite a while after he shot John Wayne. He said people get hold of his number, call him, and threaten him. But,
Are you decisive or indecisive?
I'm usually pretty decisive. I'm usually, if I have, of course, if I have too long to think about it, but I'm usually very decisive.
All right, this is just a personal preference thing, but how big should a horse be?
You know, I am, I really like between that right about 15 hands. I like, uh, some of them we got are up over the 16, but if you had to tell me to go ride all day, I'm going to pick a little shorter one. I got less ducking to do and can ride the brush easier.
I'm with you. Over about 15 too. No, thanks. I'll ride it if I have to, but I'm not going to choose it for sure. You
Yeah.
get to a certain age and you make involuntary noises when you go trying to reach for that stirrup when they're that
Yeah.
tall. Would you tell us something unexpected about you?
Well, I guess most people don't know. I guess I don't advertise it very much. I'm actually a youth group leader and a deacon in the local church. Um, Heavily involved in local church. My grandpa was actually as a Baptist preacher, and that's one thing I've not. I don't want to make that. Not that it's not important to me, but I guess I would rather that be seen instead of me having to tell everybody about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the normal person that's like putting Bible verses in their bio and then just wanting
Yeah,
that to be seen, I guess. I'd like it to be seen naturally instead of forcefully.
absolutely. I agree with you. I'm that's a pretty personal thing. I don't share a whole lot about that publicly myself. So, how long do you dunk a cookie in milk?
Oh, just two dunks. Two dunks.
Just
In
real
and out.
quick.
In and out. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's the incorrect answer. The correct answer is you hold it underwater just like a politician until the bubbles stop coming up. That's the only way to do it.
That's a good one.
Is there a skill or technique with a horse that you've seen in someone else and don't have but wish you did? So what would
Oh,
you?
yeah. So actually my best friend Oliver, who does a lot of my leather, we're always doing videos together, and he owns Scrub Oak Leather. Um, that guy is incredible with his hands. He keeps a horse nice and soft, and that is one thing I've always admired. In fact, he's kind of going to the buckaroo style a little bit. He's getting into spade bits, and man, he can just keep a horse quick, soft. Doesn't look like he's ever moving his hands. He comes up here riding, and my boss, who's a great horseman, has pointed that out to me and been like, that guy knows what he's doing. He can, and I'd like to get a little more of that. I want to get a little heavy-handed, but I guess just one of my things.
Happens with all of us. Yep. All right. I'm genuinely interested in the answer to this one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well can you back a trailer?
I would say 7. I would guess a
Okay.
7.
So am I misremembering? It seemed like if it wasn't one of your videos, it was like one of the ones related to it in the scroll where a guy jackknifed a gooseneck and basically turned it around on the side of a mountain. Was that not you, or was that like your boss just in your video or something? Or
that was my boss.
okay.
Yeah,
That's one of the, I think I'm pretty good with a trailer, but I could watch that video and go, yeah, I couldn't have done that. Or it'd have been, my first time. That was something.
That's a pretty normal day. We get to turning them things around in places most people wouldn't think of. Right there on the side of the gulch right there. He backed it right up that gulch in that old 12 or that old square body that's had that 12 valve Dodge or that 12 valve Cummins put in it. And yeah, he cranked it right around there, and he can work a trailer, but yeah, that's pretty common for us to have to be able to shimmy him around like that.
Well, I admire your modesty there then. Do you have a horse industry related pet peeve?
My horse industry, I guess I got maybe a couple of them. Would be the maybe like the show industry. Maybe the lack of understanding between what a show horse is supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be handled versus just a ranch horse. We get a lot of people that watch our videos, and maybe they're cutting horse people or equestrian people or rodeo people trying to tell us what we need to be up to. And our horses it's a totally different creature. So maybe that the lack of understanding on the horse show side, and maybe even the pet people. I'm not a horse lover I would not say I'm a horse lover. I like horses, but I don't need a horse to thrive and survive. They're pretty well a tool, but maybe another one could be the people who got their horse sense from Black Beauty. That the TV style understanding of horses, which up in my area, that comes out a lot. We're up here in Northwest Colorado, so there's a lot of money in the area. A lot of people who have no idea about horses, but they got the money to have one. And then they're going to try to tell us everything about it. So,
Yep, that's fair. Feral or spoiled? So what would you rather work with? And I don't know if you've had cause to work with very many spoiled ones, but if you had to choose, you're young enough. I know what the answer is going to be here, but
yeah, I'm going to say feral. Yeah.
All right.
You can get by a lot of stuff with a rough horse, but once they're spoiled, ooh. And you might get a horse past a lot of stuff with you. If you get a spoiled horse, we get people that want us to ride their horses because their horses are spoiled, and they want us to fix them. And they might work, they'll get it figured out if they got any brain at all, that they can't act that way around us. But as soon as that person steps back on, it's back at it. So that's kind of a difficult situation.
Yep. I do find that if you ask most people the question, can horses tell the difference between people, they'd say yes. But they don't seem to understand the practical side of that, about how this horse could ride totally different from me. And then as soon as you grab the rein, you're on a different horse than I just was. That seems to escape people sometimes. So crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Oh, smooth peanut butter for sure.
That surprised me. I thought you were going to be crunchy, no doubt.
Nope, smooth all the way. I've probably ate crunchy like 3 times in my life. So not a crunchy guy.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Really? Okay.
Really? Yep.
All right. Well, do you have like a favorite barn cat? I normally say what breed if the answer is dog, but I don't know any different breeds of cat. So what kind of, like, my wife is a male orange cat is like her jam. So you got a preference there?
If we're gonna go with breed, I'd say bobcat. I actually trap bobcat out here as a way to make a little extra money, but I always thought one of them would be cool as a pet. I thought, man, I need one of them.
I'm with you there. I've kind of thought of we're not at the point where we're throwing money away yet, but you can buy like lynx and bobcat captive bred. I'm like, if I have to have a cat, let's at least have a badass cat.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Bay or sorrel? So do you have a favorite color preference or one you hate?
I'm gonna say bay. I like the bays.
The Bay Horse Mafia is strong. When I threw that question in there, I was kind of just taking up space and figured it'd be 50-50, no big deal. It is not close to 50-50. It's like 9-1 people preferring bay horses, which makes no sense. You bring a bay horse to a sale, and it's not like he brings more money because he's a bay. It's not like a roan or something like that. But I mean, the bay horse thing is strong on here.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna say, a lot of times you'll see sorrel horses with socks, and we try to stay away from anything with socks or white feet. So that is why I will go with a bay.
All right. Fair enough. Let's see. I got to scroll down here. What is the best smell in the barn?
Oh, that's got to be. Oh, we have this pink salve that we put on about everything from saddle sores to cows with chapped tits, and it's like a peppermint. That's probably kind of a pepperminty liniment smell that we use on about everything. But the fly spray has been pretty close. That old yellow bottle fly spray. That's a pretty good smell too.
I would say chemical wise, like Absorbine has one of those kind of smells to me, like that just perks me up a little bit. I was hoping you were going to say gunpowder, but I'll just be disappointed. All right. Think sharp on this one.
Okay.
On a scale of 31 to 37, how glad are you that people do not spontaneously express themselves through song and dance?
31. Or I guess 37. I'm happy they don't. That's not my,
okay.
That wouldn't be my jam. Yeah.
All right. Thoughts or feelings?
Thoughts.
So do you consider all right.
Yeah.
I like it. Do you have a favorite barn chore? Putting the pink salve on chap tits?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Can't beat that one. Of course, come calving season, we got a lot of tagging to do. So that kind of gets to be a chore, every day we got to go do the tagging. I like the tagging. But also I'm the kind of guy I like bringing the horses in, whether I got to get them on a dirt bike or, take a halter and ride one bareback and herd the rest. That's a pretty common chore we got to do, get them horses in and get them into the corral.
Do you have a least favorite barn chore?
Ooh. Stacking small square bales is my least favorite barn chore.
Okay. Sweet, salty, or spicy?
Sweet. Okay. 100%. Yeah.
Another little surprise there. Most people choose salty. I've kind of thought because we're all outside sweating, we all need salt. So, all right. And do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
Yeah, it's gonna have to be the just the classic old T-Rex.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And final question. Have you ever had a UFO encounter?
Yeah, I did. I was actually out hunting one day, and I hear this buzzing, and I thought, man, but it was like it wasn't just a buzz, like an airplane way up, like it was almost like vibrating everything. And I looked around and I looked up and I could see what was making the noise. And it didn't it did not look it was an aircraft of some kind, but I don't exactly know what it was. Looked like the wings were way back on the body, like there was no tail after that. But it kind of looked like one of them TIE fighters from Star Wars is what it kind of looked like. And it was loud. It was way up there. I could just make out the outline of it. It was small, and it was making the most tremendous racket I have ever heard.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Well, let me tabulate your score here. I got you at 5,844 points, Tucker, which you'd be happy to know that makes you our high scorer of all time in this game. And that entitles you to either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment, your choice.
I'm gonna go with a genuine compliment.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you this. When I think social media influencer or content creator or however you'd go about it, that would normally have a kind of a negative connotation in my head. But I have to say, you have like a very wholesome way about you. You seem like the kind of guy I would send my sons off with and not worry about them, like everything would be all right, but they'd still have a good time. You have, and I mean this in a sincerely nice way. You have like an interesting blend of boy and man to you. So you're a grown man, but you kind of still have like that curiosity. Let's go get it and have some fun and yeehaw kind of a thing to you. And I appreciate that. It's a nice thing to watch you and kind of remember those days when I had that much movement in me. And
Thank you.
also,
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I kind of shy to the connotation of social media influencer, content creator. Like I kind of cringe. I used to cringe really bad. Somebody be like, "You're an influencer." I'd be like, "I don't know," but I'm getting more used to it. Especially because there's some guys stepping into this um kind of this social media that are some cool guys. And I've
mhm,
gotten some of them, and man, if I'm gonna be I guess I'm okay being like them.
yeah.
Some of them are kind of up and coming, but it's definitely changing. It's not just the in-town people doing it anymore. There's some good hands that have started videoing what they're doing,
Mhm.
and they're to watch.
Yeah. There's a fellow out there. I was thinking about reaching out to him too. He does the ranch hacks stuff,
Yeah,
and that guy's got more nifty ways of building fence and all kind of little things, and it does my heart good to kind of see that. I usually think of again, no offense, but sort of your generation as not being real useful, and
uh,
it's good to see some of you young fellas can dig a post hole and swing a hammer and get something done, so does my heart good.
yeah, for sure. Me too. And I've been really impressed. I've kind of built a relationship in the past few months with the average hired man.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Colonel Kincaid. We're in the same state. We want to get together and do stuff. And that dude, I mean, if there was a cowboy scale of being handy, that guy is it. And
Mhm.
even my buddy Oliver, who's incredibly handy. We talked about him the other day. I was like, this is the most handy guy we know. And Oliver's like, yeah, you can tell by watching that guy. He knows what he's up to.
Mhm.
And
I, I
that's
like
nice.
how he titles himself too, just the average hired,
Average guy. And I'd run him up against him and old Dally Boy. They're pretty cool. You can tell Dally Boy, he's getting with it too. I don't know him yet. I've never had anything to do with him, but I've watched a lot of it, some of his videos, maybe not lots, but been very impressed with him as well. Really doing it. So,
All right. Well, the first formal question that I have for everybody once we've broken the ice is, would you just kind of give us the 30,000-foot view of what it is that you do?
yeah. So we have a cow-calf operation up here, Northwest Colorado, and we've ended up gathering up a lot of BLM and Forest Service permits. So for you guys that don't understand that very much, the BLM and Forest Service allot sections of public ground for grazing cows on in the summer. So, this one permit that we got here right behind the house, it's 48,000 acres, just in that one permit. And I think we currently hold, last I counted, was 7 different permits, and they range from early spring to summer. Most of them end about October. We got to gather the cows off. We do have one that's a winter permit, but there's not much water on it, so we don't really use it very well. But so we've got a ranch. We're about 40 miles from the nearest gas station, so it's pretty remote. Cell service is a new thing, and we're just pretty well running a cow-calf operation off up here in the mountains.
And you're at a pretty good elevation where you are too.
Yeah.
Huh? So what is
the house sits right at 8,000 feet. The cows, they'll go all the way up to about 12,000, and as low as every once in a while, some of them low spring permits, they'll be down there about 66, 7,000. So
yeah, that's a whole different thing. I'm here at sea level, and I can't fathom what your world is. I mean, I've been in the mountains and stuff, but actually having to manage cattle long term in that, I'm sure there's so much I don't know. It wouldn't even be funny. So,
it's different for sure.
And then we don't have bears and that kind of stuff to contend with either. And I know I have a good friend that does a lot of cowboying in Colorado, and she's a lady actually, but she hates elk with a passion because they're wrecking fence all the time and stuff like that. And it's just y'all have that to deal with, or not so much in your area?
Oh man. So the elk herds are absolute in our area up here, are in the gutter. The bear population is so large that our elk herds have just been decimated by the bears. And a lot of people, they don't, a lot of people say, well, I don't really see a bear killing an elk. And the answer is, well, elk, they go back to the same spot every year to calve. They have the same calving grounds. The whole herd will go there. Well, the bears just know where those are, and they just slaughter the calf crop. That being said, it doesn't take a lot of elk to tear down a fence. You get a herd of 5, 10 cows coming through that are pretty spooked, and they're moving. They're going to tear a fence down, at least a pretty good hole. I don't hate them for it. I like my job, I guess. I don't mind fixing fence, and I'd rather be out. In high school I had to work in town. Actually worked at the local grocery store. And the worst day out there on the worst hole in the fence is better than the best day at City Market. So I guess I'm okay with fixing fence after an elk herd goes through.
Well, that kind of leads us into how did you get your start? Like, are you the 7th generation, this, that, and other, or not so much?
Yes, yes, and no, mostly no. My family, they came out of Utah. The early 1900s. They moved back east here, and they were sheepmen. They had a sheep outfit. The Forest Service and BLM, they can run sheep on that as well, different permits. And my family had a big sheep operation that was kind of run along with 2 other families. And when my great grandpa got old, nobody else wanted it. Or I guess technically my great great grandpa. My great grandpa did not want it. So my family pretty well got out of ranching. And then my grandpa, like I said, is a preacher. And the community that we live in, there's like 100 people in a 20-mile stretch. Um, the town consists of a church and a post office. So my grandpa was the preacher of the church. And the we've been family friends with these people for a long time. My Curtis, who is one of my bosses, technically my boss's son, his great grandpa was friends with my grandpa. So been friends for a long time. And while I was still in high school, I decided that, ranching was probably something that was going to be pretty cool and I should probably get into it. And I started talking to them. I rode with them for a summer, and the next year they offered me a job, and I've been here ever since.
All right. Um, so why don't we'll take a little shift here. So I kind of probably came across you more for your gun content than anything else. And I really, like I said, I really appreciate that. I'm a pretty big gun nut, and I'm particularly a revolver fan. So it's nice to see someone out there not carrying a Glock or a Sig or something like that.
Yeah.
So how did you come across the gun stuff? Have you always been into that, or did
Yeah.
the cowboy and out in your part necessitate it, or what?
No, I have always been a gun guy. Growing up, we were always hunting. My best friend and I, through high school and stuff, we were homeschooled, so we had pretty well free run of the place. And there was a time, my best friend and I were probably hunting somewhere between 150 to 200 days a year on about anything that walked. We were, and then when I came into the ranching, my boss Keith, um, they're all gun nuts, but I've always been into history, and they had a lot of cool, whether it's a remake or it is an original, old one that really sparked my love for it, especially because I came to the point where I had the need and the use for the old cowboy guns. And so that definitely changed the direction of my gun interests, but I've always been very interested.
So how do y'all go about breaking a horse to be shot off of or shot around? Is that a process, or kind of they just all get used to it, or what?
Yeah, pretty well. You know, uh, a lot of them, kind of funny. A lot of people that watch my videos say, "Man, that's a great horse. Um, don't mind being shot off of." And there's some of them that do not like it. And a lot of times, if we're going to get pretty serious, shooting off a horse is kind of like shooting off a paint shaker. So it is kind of impractical unless you really got to be fast. And there's times you better be, if you got a coyote that you're looking at, you better get him shot pretty quick. But um, a lot of times, I think we run a lot of bull whips. There's lots of popping going on, and I think that helps. I think that'll really um, desensitize a horse to that. They don't really like it for a while, but you got to be willing to just sit down and ride, and they'll calm down. Especially if you don't make it a problem. A lot of us we're around lots of other horses, so when we have a colt or something that we're dinking with, there's usually between 2 and 5 other well broke, well versed cow horses there. And like the little colt I got that we were working on all last summer, she would take about one spook. And when she realized that none of the other horses were bothered and it didn't hurt her that first time, she was kind of a no more spook type horse, just her personality. We got some that we got to hash it out with every day, but I think running a bullwhip off of them for a long time and teaching them that popping's not hurting them, then you can shoot a lot of lower. caliber stuff relatively easy.
So are y'all playing with, like, that kind of surprises me, because when I think of your country, I do not think of guys carrying whips. Whereas down here where I'm at in Florida, that's a pretty common sort of thing. So are y'all playing with whips just to get the horses broke and have fun, or are y'all actually using them?
No, we're actually using them on the cows. You know, whether it's just the noise of keeping them moving, or there's many times that a bull decides that he's going to get on the fight, and that
Mhm.
bullwhip comes in pretty handy. So we actually use a lot of stock whips, the Australian style. You got a little easier to learn, and they're actually my one of my buddies braids them and makes them, and he would rather do the stock whips, so we get a hold of the stock whips pretty easily.
Mhm. Yep.
So
Having that little longer handle makes it a lot easier to use off of the
yeah,
horse, where it keeps it away from them, where you don't get the
yep,
horse on accident. Yep.
not whacking them in the ears, you know. So
Well, cool. Well, I don't know if you have, but you ought to do some videos on that. If you haven't, I
yeah,
haven't seen any. If you have, so
I haven't yet. I've had it in a few videos, just kind of just a clip of us running a bullwhip, but never like a full video on it.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
if any of y'all listening are not familiar with Tucker, he does a lot of explaining kind of stuff. So he goes over his gear, and you got videos on shaps and chinks and tapaderos and different kinds of holsters, and why you prefer this one over that one, and breaking it all down, and you do a really good job with that sort of stuff. I have to say, I'm a little surprised. Like, again, I'm in an area where we get a lot of rainfall, and you are way more concerned with staying dry than I would have expected a fella out in the West to be. So I guess y'all get some rain where you're at, too.
You know, it's we are a very dry climate. Um, but the problem that we face, if you're up, I don't know if you saw my video where we were shooting ptarmigan. Took a
Mm-hmm.
big long ride way up there in the high country. If you get wet on that day, even in the middle of August, your concern is now I'm going to freeze to death. It's not about staying, it's about staying dry enough to stay warm, because even in that country can snow anytime. And if you get wet,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're in the dark, yeah, you'll probably die up there in that high country. So I've rode, we did a big day. We actually packed salt, had to cut some trail because we decided we were going to take the cows um over there within the next little while this summer. And it came in snowing, and it must have been late July, early August. And it was cold. It hailed inches on us the entire time. Hat soaked through, slickers. Once your hat soaks through, even though you got a slicker on, it's running down your neck. Hands were soaked, feet were soaked. Well, I guess my feet weren't soaked. Some of the guys were. But yeah, it's important for us, especially in that high country, stay dry, because if you get wet, even in the middle of summer, you're going to be battling the temperature.
So I have done some hiking and stuff in the mountains. This was in New Mexico specifically, but in the higher elevations. I think we went up to 13.5 or something like that. And this was end of July and August, and like clockwork, every afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock, we would get a rain shower or sleet or hail or something. But something made you wet pretty much every day. So is it like that in y'all's part of the world there too? Then.
It depends on the summer. But the high elevations definitely are prone to um a lot more weather coming in, even if it's just a fast moving burst.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they are prone to it, and you can get in trouble when you're no cell service, 20 miles of riding in, and a long ways from home. So we this last summer was dry. In fact, it was pretty well a record drought. But still, that one storm was enough to keep us cold. even in a time when it's a record drought.
Do you have many surreal moments up there where you're like up on a mountain and you're thinking I'm on a horse and there's a cloud below me and something about that just doesn't seem normal? You ever have moments like that?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I think what in the world am I doing this high up on a horse? Looking over some of these mountains that we're up on top of, and even looking at a hillside that we got to go around and get cows that's it's bared off, it's pretty well just tundra and rocks. And thinking I'm gonna have to trade my horse in for a mountain sheep to get across some of this stuff. But we generally make it. But there's some trails and sometimes you kind of do wonder, what are we up to up here? And then looking out over it, yeah, you hit early October, late September. It's a nice frosty morning up on some of them high peaks and look at them yellow aspens spread across there. Like, man, this is it. I'm happy right here.
Yeah. Feel a little closer to God in that kind of area,
yeah.
don't you? Yep. Absolutely.
Dude.
So I guess maybe for some of the non-gun people, I recently made a gun comment, and a lady from New Zealand just said, she was fascinated by our gun culture and why we would feel the need to carry a gun or something like that. So why do you pack a gun? What's the cause?
I am gonna be mostly using one for what I would consider to be a utility purpose. And you'll notice that reflected in my holsters and uh, my gear. I got a lot of people tell me, well, your gun is never going to work for a fast draw. You'd be dead. And I'm thinking, in what world are we ever going to be fast drawn here? I need a holster that's keeping my gun in. I might have to put down a broke leg calf. There might be one thing that has kind of shifted lately is our moose population is exploded. And moose and horses just do not mix. Moose, of course, they're problematic everywhere they are. But you get a bunch of mares and you get a bull moose that's rutting, and now you got trouble. And a moose will rape a horse. So when we're gathering, that's right at the peak of their rut. And I know guys who, are gun guys. They usually don't pack one every day, but they've told me, you know what, I'm starting to pack one all the time because we're seeing so many moose. And when we got hunters up here, our buddy who actually told me that he had a guy treed by a moose ran him up a tree, then wouldn't let him down. Moose tore down one of their tents. So it's, moose are a big problem. Self-defense is always on our mind, especially because, like I said, there's no cell service. And at the house, we're an hour from the nearest gas station. So help isn't coming. You better be able to deal with the problem at hand because nobody's going to come and bail you out. But you'll generally, for every one time you use one or would use one in a self-defense, you'll pack it, maybe 1,000 days and never need it. And you might put down 2 or 3 cows, broke leg. The elevation does cause some trouble with the cattle. Brisket disease is kind of a common one, and it's an elevation induced. Pretty well, the simplest way of explaining it would be heart failure caused by elevation. So there's nothing you can do for them. So every once in a while, we put down one with brisket, put down a calf or cow with a broke leg, stuff like that. You might run onto a bear. Bears are the black bears we have are very unaggressive, but if we have lots of cows that are unaggressive too that decide one day they're going to be aggressive. So you just always got to be ready. And part of that's what the difference between the American culture and all these other countries is we don't want to have to rely on everybody else. We're going to have to deal with the problem and not just wait for somebody to come help us out. So,
self-sufficiency, independence. Yep.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
get it. So just as a little side note, do you reload? Are you into that side of things too?
Yeah, I am. My dad very much is. And my boss Curtis was a 1,000-yard shooter for a while, and so I am into reloading. I'm getting more into it. Actually for Christmas, got one of those Lee hand presses, so I don't have to have a bench or anything. And I'm building kind of a, like an on-the-go kit. I'm not somebody who's really into dinking with a lot of, especially for like my old trusties, my 45 Colt, my 30-30. I'm not really going to be doing lots of like load data tweaking and stuff like that. I pretty well just want a reliable run of the mill load.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because, you know, if a lot of people that are really doing stuff to loads and making them really hot, I don't like that so much, because if I have something going on and I need to just grab a box of ammo, from somewhere, or, maybe I have something else, I need a different ammo that's not normal. I usually try to run all my stuff pretty standard so that I
Mm-hmm.
can generally shoot about any ammo fairly reliably, instead of, I know some guys that just stack everything as full as with as much powder as they can get fit in the cartridge and throw it
Yeah.
out there. But
I've never been one of those. I would rather a weak 44 Magnum, still a 44 Magnum. You know what I mean? You don't have to blow the doors off everything and take a chance on blowing a gun up or something like that.
yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely.
So I have seen you're mostly carrying like saddle carbines, lever guns, and then revolvers. Is it all single action stuff? Are you getting into anything a little more modern, or are we all classics, or what?
No, I mean, I got my foot in about everything. I just got a Smith and Wesson double action revolver.
Which one?
It's a, oh, I'm gonna forget the model number right now. It's a 3220. It was made in 1915. I think it's the 1905. Smith and Wesson
Okay.
1905. It's made in 1915, and that has been a pretty cool little revolver to pack around. I also I have just a Sig. I guess I have a Smith and Wesson. I got two Smith and Wesson 9 millimeters, a Sig 9 millimeter. Um, but I usually am not going to be packing anything like that out, working or riding. I'll generally stick with the 45 Colt, and definitely shopping around for probably a Ruger Vaquero, an old full size Ruger Vaquero. Um, One thing a lot of people don't understand is how underpowered your average uh, pistol cartridge is. So I really, I've done a lot of shooting, and we do a lot of varmint control on, woodchucks and gophers. And I've been out and I've shot woodchucks and stuff with just with a 40. My boss has a 40 carbine, or a Ruger PC carbine, 40 Smith and Wesson, and not very impressed. You shoot something with it, kind of thinking, man, this ain't very good. I don't think I'd want to bank very much on this. So
Especially for an overpressure round. Yeah, it's one of the worst choices you can make, I think.
yeah,
So for some people that might not know what I'm talking about, single action, that means that the trigger performs one action. So these are the guns you have to cock. So you cock the
yeah,
hammer, you pull the trigger, it goes bang. Double action means you can pull the trigger and it will both cock the hammer and fire the gun. So like the Smith and Wessons that you're talking about, those tend to be double actions, and I'm a big fan of them. But like the
nice.
Ruger Vaquero is single action and all, just for everybody's knowledge there. Because I am surprised how many people don't actually understand the basics of guns, and unfortunately, some of them set laws. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's Colorado is one of those places where we are fighting that right now.
yeah,
Some ridiculous.
Let me hear the word clip come out of your mouth, right? Um, so I got another question for you on the ptarmigan. So I like that reel that you had there. You shot one of them clean in the head. So are you shooting birdshot capsules out of your 45, or was that a slug and you took his head off at I'm guessing 50 feet or something? That was a pretty good little one-handed too. So nice shot.
That one brought up a lot of keyboard warriors. But it was a solid core. It was just a 250 grain flat nose, just a cowboy action load. I actually shot all three of them with it, with that thing. I'd been trying to get a video. So what had happened was, man, we had spotted these cows way out, and we're like, we're gonna have to spend an extra day. And we didn't bring enough food, so we thought, well, we'll gather some more food before we camp tonight and kind of supplement in some ptarmigan. So I just went out there and I find them, and I was right on top of this one, and I'm trying to get a video and all that stuff, and I missed it, and I thought, I better get with it, or I'm gonna have no bullets, no ptarmigan, and be hungry in about 2 days. So I put the camera down. I shot two of them. That last one had come out, and there was only three in the bunch, actually. I just found a little bunch of three of them. And I decided, well, I've got two. I'm going to take a chance in video along with that. And I think I missed the first shot. He was right. He was not close, but I missed the first shot. And I almost put the phone down. I thought, no, this'll work. I can get this done. I can get a video. And yeah, the last one was the one that's on the video. Just throwed her up there one-handed and got it right in the head. A lot of people, and it's not so much the fault of people. A lot of people thought it was bird shot, but bird shot out of a 4 3/4 inch barrel. I figure it was about 15 yards is how far I shot it at. There's no bird shot left, especially a bird shot pattern at that distance is ridiculous. But it was a lucky shot. I will say that. Like the blind sow picked up another acorn.
You got dinner. That's what matters.
Yeah, got dinner, and it was. I got to where it boosted my confidence, I should say, and I got to where I used that revolver quite a bit, and I've shot quite a bit of stuff with it. But after that, using it, I'm like, okay, I'll try some more shooting. I'll take some shots now, a little farther, a little better, and they generally work. But it was not bird shot like a lot of people said, or a rat shot.
Well, yeah, at that distance, yeah. Oh, well, I like a 45. I actually carry a 41. Is my preference, and I love the saying that a 9mm might expand, but a 45 ain't gonna shrink.
Yeah.
So, well, Tucker, this would probably be a good time for me to pay the bills and do our advertisement for our sponsor. And I had a total brain fart when I talked to you on the phone, and I went a different way. I forgot we had a classic sponsor that was going to be absolutely perfect for you, and I haven't brought them up in a while. So, Tucker, your episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship is sponsored by the Alex Baldwin School of Firearm Safety. It's time to bring back one of our old sponsors. The Alec Baldwin School of Firearm Safety embodies the principles of safety inspired by our founder, Alex Baldwin. We make sure that you know the most important rules of firearm safety, like if someone hands you a loaded gun, it's probably fine. No need to check it. Don't point the muzzle at anything you aren't wealthy enough to pay for after killing or destroying it. If a gun shockingly fires a projectile you weren't expecting, call your publicist first and let the little people call 911. Damage control before muzzle control, always. Keep your finger on the trigger at all times because you don't get paid for just waving these things around. You should either always be closing or pulling the bang switch, baby. The staff here at Alex Baldwin School of Firearm Safety wants you to know that the range is always hot, but it closes before 6. What are we, farmers? And we really do need you to sign on the dotted line and come with your own life insurance. Here at Adult Onset Horsemanship, we stand behind Alex Baldwin because we're sure as hell not going to stand in front of him. All right. Well,
Well,
that
that's
tickles
good.
me to get to bring that one back out of the closet and dust the mothballs off. So this was
Yeah.
perfect. So the thing I got to ask you here, and you've done some videos on scabbards and holsters and stuff, but I mean, I've done a whole lot of stuff on horses, and it sometimes turns out rough. So you have to have had a gun get away from you and fall once in a while. So how often has that happened, and how do you learn about it and deal with it?
I know of one time in particular. It's actually while I was fairly new to it. Um, the leather I had it under my saddle string, so I had run the scabbard up attached to the front. I think I was on my the D ring on the front where my cinch is, of course, for the front, and then I had it going out the back, and I just had it looped to this around the bottom of the saddle strings, and I had my slicker tied, and saddle strings actually broke, and it tipped down, laid the gun out right there on the ground. We caught it within no time, But ever since then, I do not rely very much on a saddle string. I'll do it every once in a while, but one of the things that I kind of do nonchalantly while I ride is I'm always checking my gear, whether it's my rope, my gun, maybe even my phone if I got my phone or my camera along that day. A lot of times, even subconsciously, I'm checking for that stuff. And that's so if I have to run one through a saddle string, maybe the way that scabbard is, or just the way I want to pack it that day, I make sure I check it quite a bit because you will drop stuff. Um,
Yeah.
the worst one, and I have not had it yet. And you'll see me packing like that in a few of my pictures. Um, is the butt of the rifle forward coming out towards like the neck of the horse. And you'll see that in most movies. Um, and I get people all the time tell me that the rifle backwards is stupid and why would I ever do that? But the answer is if you go charging through a stand of quakey trees or aspens and they're growing real close, you can bust the stalk off. So that has been one that I am always very concerned about. Is if you got that old stalk pointed up there and you go by an oak brush or a tree, we're chasing cows through a lot of this stuff at a dead run, so you're dodging brush and stuff's coming at you pretty fast. You'll snap a stalk in a bad situation. So that's also another one, kind of along with dropping. You're not going to notice very often do I have the rifle up toward the butt towards the front of the horse for that reason.
No, that makes total sense to me. And also, if you had to rope something, now you
Yeah.
got the butt of a rifle up there in your way, and yeah, there's no way I would be going that way. So I understand that completely.
I get a lot of guys, to be honest, there's no nice way of saying it. I get a lot of has-beens that really thought they cowboyed once, maybe they worked for a ranch for a summer in their 20s or something. And they didn't pack guns. They don't think anybody else should. And they wonder, well, I get the question, why would you ever be roping with a gun on? And the answer is I've seen guys who have cowboyed lots more than I have, and they got a rifle on and they're roping with it. It's not this taboo. It's kind of a pullback, I think, from the movies, to be honest. Everybody wants to be real and not just being like the TV shows or whatever. But there's times you come to that, and when you do, you don't want the rifle in the way. So
Yeah. Well, thank God we don't have to ask permission, right? We just saddle up and go.
go on with it.
So how often are y'all camping up there when y'all are on drives? Like, it's usually you're not heading back to the house every night, or y'all are camping out
Um,
there days at a time, or depends?
So we kind of know going into it that this is going to be a multi-day um, trip. In fact, the trip that we're on with I shot the ptarmigan on, we take that trip every year. It's the outside circle for that one permit, kind of the south side of it, and we take it every year. And we used to do it in a day, um, but we were pushing. The last time I did it, we went 34 miles in a day, and that's a lot of climbing. We went from 8,000 feet on up over, almost we were above tree line for better half in the day, and then back down and chasing cows back up on the other side. So it just got to where it was quite a lot to get done in a day and get a very clean gather. Um, there's days like turning on the reservoir that we ride in and then snowshoe in. That's a 2-day trip. Cow camp. Um, lately we've been doing stuff a little different with cow camp, but that's usually like 5 days, 5-day trip. And we have a cabin for that one. Sweetwater cow camp is usually a 2-night trip. Um, the Crescent Lake trip, that's usually a 1-night trip, sometimes two. But we're also not opposed to, um, if we're out in the middle of nowhere and it gets dark and we still want to gather the next day, we might as well just build a fire and stay there for the night. So it can go either way, but we do have a lot more overnight trips than most cow operations do. A lot more riding, camping type stuff. Even if there's a big day of cutting trail, we did that a little bit this summer. Had a big trail to cut, of course, with pack horses and stuff. So we spend the night. Might as well. It's you know, anywhere from a 4 to 6 hour ride in. So you might as well get a good day of cutting or whatever you need to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few times about coyotes, and I'm a little surprised that you haven't said anything about wolves, because wolf reintroduction to Colorado was a pretty big hot topic here a couple of years ago. And so do y'all don't have any in your area, or we're
No,
just using code words, or what?
well, we're ground zero for the wolf reintroduction, and the neighbors have had trouble. People in the church have had trouble. We have not had any yet, and mostly that's because we have been praying, and that's number one, the best recourse you can do, but at this point, pretty well the only recourse. Um, and one of the problems that people were having was, a rancher would report a kill, and the tree hugger groups would then show up to their ranch having a fit, they would report it. So I have kind of stayed off of the wolf topic just for that reason of I'm not really trying to for the
Yeah.
ranch that I work for. I've never, I'm not shy about it. I'm absolutely anti-wolf. I could tell stories all the time, the old timers and what they had gone through with them. Um, but we have not had any trouble. And I have to preface that with that we know of. When you're covering 48,000 acres in this one permit, for people who don't know, that's like 75 square miles. Trying to find one calf that got drugged down one night and, there's nothing left of it by morning, you're just not going to. And so we don't really know, but we have not had any trouble here at the house. They come through every once in a while. Um, but in fact, I haven't actually seen one since the reintroduction happened. Um, I had seen one years ago before the reintroduction was a thing. Um, and that kind of leads into the other deal. There is, for me at least, of course I'm out. I've seen 5 coyotes in the past 2 days. There's no mistaking. Is that a wolf? Is that a coyote? It's
Mhm.
It's cut and dry. When you see one, you're like, holy smokes, this is a wolf. There's no
Yeah.
question in your mind about it. But bears give us lots of trouble. Um, Coyotes give us lots of trouble. Predators, predator control. Probably every state can tell you the same thing. Predators are out of control, and everything is suffering because of that. And I get a lot of people say, "Well, that's ridiculous." You guys, you know, whether we work with the DOW or whatever, you know, you that's just terrible. The wolves have to eat too. And it's like, okay, well, in my opinion, the way to fix the wolf reintroduction would be every time somebody gets a rancher gets a calf killed, everybody who voted for the wolf needs to have $2,500 taken out of their paycheck. And we would see how long it takes everybody losing that much money to get on the idea. Yeah, this ain't a very good idea. So, especially when it's coming to the food industry, I don't understand. A lot of people in Colorado are very adamant, rancher, and there is a little bit, but this entitlement idea, a lot of people have things against the landowners because we've kept the land for a long time, and we haven't sold it off for profit. Um, so a lot of people think that we're kind of just the snobs that control everything, and it's really not like that. We're as subject to our corrupt government and our people in higher offices much as anybody are. So, but understanding people don't want to admit that, hey, you get rid of the cow industry, it's going to be pretty hard to get some food. And I don't really understand that, but I think it's just a disconnect. People have gotten so far away from understanding where their food comes from that they just don't get it anymore.
So you mentioned earlier that y'all had a lot of bears. Is there kind of an inverse thing with the bears keep the wolves away, but you have to deal with the bears, or not at all? No. Okay.
No. They say once the packs get pretty big, that they'll just kill the bears. Your average black bear here in Colorado, I'm going to say your average is right at 250 pounds. The game warden says they're a little bigger, but I'm going to guess not. We can't trust the game wardens. They've told us no truth from the time the wolf reintroduction started, so why would we start trusting them? But you got to figure your average bear is going to be right about 250 pounds. Most bears that people are seeing, because a lot of times it's actually, cubs, yearling bears that aren't so wise to people, looking for an easy meal. A lot of times your troublemakers are going to be young and small bears, uh, because the big bears have run them out of everything. So most of the bears that lots of people are seeing probably are about 150 pounds, if I were to guess. And, a wolf is up there, he'll get up to that 130 mark, fairly common. Some of the big ones that they've reported out of Alaska being 150. So, most bears, they don't really have a chance. You get 330-pound wolves on a 250-pound bear, and the bear can climb the tree, but he can only stay up there so long. So they're going to have some trouble. But they say same thing about the lions. The wolves will just run the lions out, kill them too. Either kill them or run them out, whichever they can. I guess they're pretty territorial, so but
I was having a talk with a buddy of mine from Utah. I think it was Ty Evans, and he was talking about how far those lions would travel too. They aren't like they'll go states. I mean, they'll travel hundreds of miles. They don't just necessarily stay in the same area. So
the funny is we had a lion here in Colorado that they had collared as a fairly young lion, a young Tom, and he was run over in Pennsylvania. So they move. They do move. Yeah, they cover a lot of country. But the wolves do too. They talk about a wolf pack can move between 50 and 70 miles every day if they're really. That's kind of what makes them so hard to control, what makes them so hard to hunt, is they're always on the move. So, you might be hunting them one night in a spot, maybe get into them. They might be 50 miles away by the next day, so I had talked to a guy. He was the ranch manager at the Matador Ranch in eastern Montana. And he said that they talked about the old timers had talked about that lived out on the plains. They talked about the wolf packs traveling 40 miles in a night, and they would kill everybody who had bottle calves or anything in the corral. The wolves would come into the corral and get their calves. So they said they had to lock everything up, even being 40 miles from the mountains where the wolves traditionally were. So them suckers, they cover a lot of country.
Let's talk a little bit about gear, because you do some gear review kind of a stuff, and I gotta say, like, that's one of the things when I look at you, I'm kind of a minimalist, and I know you're heading out there, and what you have on you is all you're gonna have. But I'm like, man, that guy's got a lot of shit. like you just got stuff hanging all over you. I'm like, man, that's got to be like uncomfortable. You get
Yeah.
so how do you manage all of that? Do you just get used to it, or have you whittled things down sometimes where you don't carry all of it, or what?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the day. If I'm going to be taking a multi-day trip, I'm going to have a lot more. But most of the time, as long as I got a gun of some kind and a knife, I'm pretty happy. But there are some days it's like, man, this is just wearing everything that I'll traditionally wear, boots and spurs and chaps and a gun belt and a lot of times a vest because I want to be carrying syringe, maybe a little medicine. It adds up fast. And traditionally, I do pay attention. Not going to carry anything that I'm going to hang up with, a no loops of any kind. Ever you'll see us with our scarves. When a morning starts out cold, we'll take our scarves off once it gets hot. But that'll be about the only thing that's very much of a danger of hanging up with, and it's way up away from a saddle horn or some anything else that could get hung up. But we do battle a lot of temperature swing. So, like last spring when we shut the reservoir off, when we left the house, it was 80 degrees. And by the next morning, it had froze and, there's ice on the water. So we kind of have to be prepared for both worlds. It's going to be hot all day and it's going to be freezing cold all night.
Mm-hmm.
So I generally try to you'll see me wearing a vest, a scarf, chaps, of course, to keep me warm and dry, but that kind of plays into it too. You got to have enough stuff to stay cool when it's hot and warm when it's cold, and that's not very easy.
So when y'all are camping, are y'all hauling like bedrolls and stuff? Y'all have a pack horse you drop off and make a base camp, or
Yeah.
because I know that can be a miserable night on cold rocky ground. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've done it both ways. Uh, take nothing and spend the night with just what you got. And if you have of course, we have a horse herd, so you might as well take a pack horse. And you might as well not starve. You might as well take some good food, and you might as well take a warm sleeping bag because you'll be happy about midnight if you do. There's times that doesn't work. You got to be pretty, you got a lot of country to cover. Maybe you got an extra guy coming. So you got to be pretty sparse, and you're not going to be as sleeping like a king, but take enough to make it through the night for sure.
yeah, I always when I go horse camping, we eat good. Like we eat better doing that than we do at home. We're gonna cook, and I'll have Dutch ovens, and I'll get you fat out in the middle of the mountains. You know what I mean?
I get
Oh,
that. And a fish pole. Got to have a fish pole. That's important. If we're taking a pack horse somewhere or we know we're going to spend the night, you might as well have a fishing pole with you because that's
hmm,
fun. Just can't beat that.
absolutely. And what about so this is a piece of gear you're using that I really don't I've never fooled with, and you seem to be pretty happy with him, and that's tapaderos. To me, it's always kind of looked like just and you're riding with some modest ones, like the ones that have that big flap hanging two
Oh,
feet below it.
yeah.
I got there's nothing about that I want anything to do with. I've heard of guys, blocking a calf with it or something. That just looks like a whole bunch of stuff hanging off your horse you don't need. But so you're using a little more utilitarian. So why don't you tell us about your
Yeah.
tapaderos?
Yeah. So those there's three types of tapaderos. There's Eagle Beak, and that's the ones that you're talking about. Got the big long flaps, Roy Rogers, them big things hanging off. There's Eagle Beak, Bulldog, and Monkey Nose, and are going to be your three traditional styles. And I think mine are Bulldog, but there's a couple things. They're mostly for the snow. When we're getting cold, trying to keep a boot dry in these winter storms that come on to us is the main purpose. They are really nice um, because you can actually, when you're riding, you hit over 20, 30 miles, you're going to be getting a little sore and you can kind of rock up on mine are actually closed bottoms. So you can rock up onto like the balls of your feet a little bit, relieve that pressure. That's kind of nice. Also like them, you're tearing through. We have a lot of sagebrush and stuff. And you have you have this tap that's now going through the brush and you're not whacking your toes. And I've never had it happen, but I just know that someday you'd and I know of people I'm sure have done it, be going through the brush and that brush rips the toe of their sole of their boot off. I always see that. I'm thinking that's gonna happen, especially if you have kind of a worn out set of boots. So that they also protect your boots and keep you dry when you need it. Now, I'm always greasing my boots, putting bear grease on them. But any extra protection helps, especially when it gets cold. Another nice thing about them is you can't hang up. There's no way to stick your foot through that stirrup and get drug around. And mine are oxbow shaped pretty well. Anyways, oxbows are
Hmm.
traditional. You can't hang up in an oxbow. Plus, can't stick your foot through it. So it's a pretty nice mix of everything I need. But
And then the shoeing packages that y'all are using on your horses. So I don't know. I've seen some of the videos. Looks like you got a fair bit of rocks and stuff. And if you're covering that many miles, so are y'all using Boreum Drill Tech or nails with Boreum on them, or heel
no,
caulks, or just depends, or what?
um, we're traditionally just using a plain, like a St. Croix Forge heel and toe shoe. Most of the time, we want that heel and toe. We actually want the toe because them horses in them rocks, they'll wear that part of the shoe out first most of the time. So that toe gives it gives you a lot of time between, if we just run a normal rim shoe, we'd wear it out quite a bit quicker. But the shoes will eventually break into a lot of times. So the heel and toe is mostly for that um, extra longevity that we get out of them. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't like them. Um, a lot of people think that it puts unneeded stress on the joints of the horse, especially if they're turning pretty hard in soil. Them that heel and toe sticking down there. Um, we're on so much rock that it's like we better just pick our battles. So our horses are extremely stout. They're raised out here. We really don't bring in horses from anywhere else. We just raise our own, um, so that they can handle, what we're up to. And most of them are stout, um, stout built little mountain horses, not very tall, totally built for this type of stuff, you know. But I have not gotten into a lot of the specialty shoeing stuff. I am not I mean, I shoe all the horses on the ranch, but I am not a farrier by any mean. Any means. I can get it done. The shoes last a long time. The horses walk good, but it would benefit me to learn some more about that kind of stuff, like the borium and you know what what different shoes you could put on for different longevities. We've kind of thought about we're usually using like a City Head 5, just your standard nail, but we have thought about in the winter they make those ones that are for ice, you know, the head of the nail sticks out quite a bit. And we've
Hmm.
thought about that too, for the rocks, just because another one, if the shoe, a lot of times if the shoe doesn't break apart, we'll actually wear the heads off the nails, even
Hmm.
down in the rim, just being on rocks. So we thought maybe that would give us a little bit longer of a time, but at some point you wonder, when are we becoming ice skates? You know, we have so little, you know, if the horse is just walking on the rim of the heel and the toe, and then the nail heads, you know, you wonder, you do
Yeah.
more sliding than it's worth. So
So the two things I've heard about that is if you go with the nail heads like that, it does work pretty well, they say, but you need to buy a second driving hammer for that because it's harder than your hammer is, so it's going to eat your hammer up, and
yeah,
then it'll also eat up the floor of your trailer. So as
yeah,
horses are going in and out, you know that's harder than anything else in there. So they're going just like it would take little chunks of rock with it. It'll take little chunks of steel too. So you kind of got to, like I say, pick your battles. Decide what. I wouldn't mind another $50 hammer, but eating out the floor of a trailer, that'd be something I'd think a little bit about before I did.
it's a
You know.
lot.
So,
Yeah, I get that. And you know, one of the things is the price of shoeing in my area is ridiculous. I know, like my neighbor, he shoes, he's a farrier, and you know, if he goes up north here, he's getting like $200 a head to shoe. So it pretty well is the point. We got to be able to do it. We don't want to be throwing, you know, throwing lots of unneeded money out and
yeah.
I'd like to get with some guys. I got some buddies who are getting pretty good at horseshoeing. And I've actually built some relationships this summer with some pretty good horseshoers. And I'd like to learn more about it and get to where I don't know if I really want to get into corrective shoeing. I guess that's kind of a different idea, but you know, I probably wouldn't keep a horse that really needed corrective shoeing to begin with,
Hmm.
which is what we're up to, but it could come in handy.
Yeah, well, the better your shoeing is, the less likely there are to need corrective shoeing, right? You kind of keep them straight and balanced, and then you don't torque something that you shouldn't have torqued and all that. So
Absolutely.
I've often thought that kind of the difference between a really good shoeing job or trimming job and a pretty good one is about a millimeter somewhere or
Mhm.
other, and the difference between a really good one and a pretty bad one's about 2 millimeters. So there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot of
Not a lot of
room
wiggle
for
room.
error in there, or you're gonna mess something up. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of like to, it's just my own idea. It could be right, it could be wrong. But especially when we're getting down there on the bottom side, I see a lot of guys paring out the soles and really trimming it up and cleaning it up and making it look really nice. And for me, I'm thinking, you know, I'm gonna want to leave as as much of the sole in my mind as I can. That horse has built that up. You know, he's on rock all the time.
Hmm.
As as long as, because then some people say, well, then the problem is that sole can get down there and get to where it's getting hit by rock and stuff. And I get that idea too. Um, but I generally am gonna chew, I guess I would call it as little as least invasive as I can get. Leave
Hmm.
as much of that protection that they have built up and still get the shoe on and make it what the horse needs.
Yeah,
So
That makes sense. Be conservative. You can always do more later, but you can't put it back on.
Can't put it on.
Do you ever do pads, leather pads, or anything like that, or you haven't had to mess with that?
No, we haven't done it. I know some people who have done like the silicone pads for problem, have horses with split hoof, or they're coming out with some uh pretty cool tech all the time. Even to the point, they're pouring resin or something down in between the horse's foot and a pad, but we really don't have to worry about that very much. Trying
Yeah,
to
I
push.
can tell you firsthand too. That takes a lot of the traction out. Those horses, even on grass, like that can become ice skates. So you have to be pretty careful about how and where you're doing that stuff. So yeah,
I believe it.
absolutely. Well, I guess the last question I'll ask you is woolies. So does it get cold enough for y'all riding in winter where you got cause for woolies? You get to tell the wife, "Hey, I really need a pair of these things," or what? Not so much.
Oh, absolutely. I like woolies. I don't have a set yet. I'm gonna preface that with yet. They are definitely high on the list. My boss has a set, and his are Angora goat, but he says they're usually too warm. We haven't been cold like we used to be here lately. We're going through cycles. It'll probably dip down and start getting colder again here pretty quick, but there's definitely times that I would like woolies. I've just always been a little picky on what kind of fur I want to use. Never really thought I'd like the Angora goat. Um, I keep saying that I'm going to get a bear and make woolies out of it. And a couple years ago, I was hunting fourth season, so it was right about or I guess third season, but it was about the weekend before Thanksgiving. I was deer hunting, but I had a bear tag, and we spotted a bear. And I thought, oh man, it's like cold, nasty. He's going to have a good hide on him, and I'm going to get me a set of woolly chaps. And I killed him. And the stupid sucker had rubbed his back, rubbed the hair off of it, got it down kind of like a coyote who'd been rubbing come spring. And I was in the taxidermist shop a while later. I don't remember what I was there for, but I told Mark that. I said, yeah, he had rubbed out. And Mark said, they all do. He said, come that late season, he said all them bears will get to rubbing. And I don't know why. Um, I don't know if the hair gets itchy on them or what it is, but they will get. So that kind of killed my plans for a really nice set of bear woolly chaps, unless I go to a state with a spring bear hunt. A lot of them bears coming out in the early spring will have a really nice coat because they've been laid up all winter. So I would I'd like to do that. I've also thought about a set of woolly chaps. I thought that would be cool. Go somewhere, get a couple wolves, and have them made into woolly chaps. Um, but it's high on the list for getting a set made. So there's there's some days I guess we had a cow that decided that she was going to go to the wrong place every year and try to win her out, I guess was her idea. A couple years in a row, she kind of got in deep snow, and we ended up having actually the game warden would spot her in the same spot on the same ridge. A couple years in a row, the game warden called while they were counting their elk. So one day I think it was Christmas Eve when we went after her the one day, and it was cold all day. And we got her and another little. She had about four other pair go with her. So we got them all out. But thinking of days like that, a set of woolly chaps is high on the list. But Oliver, being a leather worker, of course, um, he's told me get him the stuff and we'll make them up. And I've thought a little bit about trying to do a chap that is the woolly part can be taken on and off, whether it like have snaps around the edge of it. I've thought a little bit about that, but then I just kind of resigned myself to I better just have two sets, woolies
Mhm.
and normals. But so it's yeah, they'd be cool. And they are cool. Every guy
You
riding
need
in
to
this.
get.
Go ahead.
I would think like llama or alpaca or something would be pretty good. And there's got to be some rich guy with a llama farm around you over there, I would imagine. But
What?
I don't know, maybe not.
There is if an Angora goat gets big enough, then surely a llama or an alpaca would get big enough.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we've thought about I killed a cow moose a couple I guess last year. Um and I killed an elk and a deer last year. So I thought, man, maybe I should get one of them made. But like Oliver was telling me, the way that hide is, that kind of hollow hair on the deer species, it pulls out real easy. So making a set of shaps out of it wouldn't last very long. You could, but they probably lose their hair pretty quick.
Mhm.
So
What about
I,
what about buffalo bison? Y'all have any of those in your area or?
there are a few ranches around that not very close, not anybody I know, but it would be possible. Get a big old, yeah, and you could make quite a few. I bet you could make two or three sets of shaps out of one bison.
Yeah.
So it'd be
Yeah, they're
pretty.
big. Have you ever been around them? Had the cowboy around them or anything?
What? Yeah, well, I guess over here, our farthest south permit, it butted up to a bison ranch. And they were letting us, they only had, I think they had like 15 bison, and they would let us gather the cows. And these are big. Each one of these permits is a pool permit, so or most of them are. So there's like five other ranches got their cows on the same permit. So that I think that permit offers like 800 pair AMU animal units. Um, so we had been gathering for a couple days. There's a corral at the down the road that we were eventually driving them to. But this buffalo ranch was kind of, it's not in the way, but it's between them. And they were letting us put the cows in there and grazing it for about a week in between. So then we'd go gather um, the cows from around the bison. And they really didn't mix very well. The cows kind of did their own thing, bison did their own thing. But the bull was something else. That thing was, and the little Angus bulls, there was one over there kind of thinking he wanted to try to whoop the buffalo, and the buffalo was twice as tall as he was. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, massive. And we're thinking, yeah, you're probably not going to do very good. The horses did not like them, not one bit. When the horse figured out that that was not a cow, they were not about it. I don't know if they
Yeah.
smell. They must smell a little different or something, but they knew something was up and they weren't going very close to him. So,
We use them. I've worked at a couple different places that had them in the cutting horse business. We use them in place of cattle because they stay fresh a whole lot longer, but they're dumb as a fence post. Like to get
okay.
them broke in where they're not wild as hell takes about a year before they kind of slow down. But I actually I think I had two bulls and four heifers, and I had a long story, but basically they got sour on me and got where they wouldn't hardly move for me anymore, and I'm having a bunch of horses to work. So I played the Buffalo Joust one day. I got on one of my 2 year olds and I got a hot shot, and I went out there and I started giving them a flight zone again, a little bubble where I'd get up in there and light them up with that hot shot until they started staying off of my horse. Because one of those things started wanting to come in and hook at me, and the horns they got, I could just imagine if he got in that horse's chest or something, that was gonna
Yeah.
be all she wrote. So anyway,
Problem.
that's the
Yeah.
fun
We,
stuff you do in your 20s. If I caught one of my sons doing that, it'd be bad, but I was
yeah.
guilty of it myself at one point. So,
Yeah. Well, we sure didn't think that when we saw how big them buffalo were, even compared to our horses, And the bull was big. I mean, he was a stud. But we really didn't think we'd want to run out there in our loincloths with a spear and go to stabbing at him. Because I mean, that dude was impressive. We we thought we'd probably rather if we had to fight one, we'd probably shoot him from a ways away because riding
Yeah.
up there, running like them Indians are doing, and go to stabbing them. That's something. That was something else.
Yeah, I do have to say these were they were not full grown. They were probably in the 600-pound range or something like that. So they were still young, but very sharp, pointy horns for
Yeah,
sure.
very sharp.
And have you ever seen one get hot? They got a pointy, almost like demonic looking tongue. It's like a little cone that comes out, and they pant like a dog.
Huh.
So that's why we were using them, because they could handle the heat better than the cattle. They would just pant and stick that tongue out, but they'd keep running where cows would quit you. But
Quit out.
man, and then you get the young ones, the yearlings, and they go to shedding out. I don't know if there's anything uglier than a yearling buffalo that's shedding out and scraggly in the spring. Like they were
Yeah.
not gorgeous like you think of. They were pretty darn, looked like a swamp creature or something. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Now I've also heard that you can't rope them around the neck. They say that you'll choke them out very fast if
yep.
you. So
I have heard that as well. I have roped them, and we didn't kill anything.
Mhm.
It worked out, but I have heard that as well. So
Yeah, something about their windpipe is set a little farther forward or
yeah.
something than a cow. But I also will say I know of guys who did uh, strangle cows, or bulls too, roping them, not trying to, but stuff goes wrong, of course. But that kind of goes along with they say if you ever got to rope a cow or a bull to cross water, they say you make sure you rope them around the neck because they won't choke without air in their lungs. So they'll float. You start choking him down, they say they'll have a breath of air in there. So they'll actually float across
Hmm.
whatever body of water you got to get him to do. So so it would have been so this ranch was started in 1892. Charlie came out west from Denver in 1885 and he homesteaded here in 92. And he had two sons. And they ended up splitting the property. The neighbor the neighbors are descendants of one of the sons, and then the people I work for are descendants of the other one. But he said he was driving a uh, a bull down to the rail station and they had to ford the river. And the people they said who lived right there at that ford had an old Appaloosa horse that was pretty well just the best thing that anybody had for fording the river. So they said anybody would show up there out of the community or lived around. They said they just go get the Appaloosa out of the guy's corral, use it, and then they just point it back towards home and they said it would swim back across the river and go home. So they said Oris had drove that bull down there and he couldn't get his horse to cross the river and he couldn't get the bull to cross the river. But he said he got that Appaloosa horse out and he said he roped that bull by the horns and he said he swam the river dragging the bull. But he said he had made the mistake of roping it by the horns. So he said that bull just went right to the bottom of the river. He said, and it liked to drown him, getting him across. But he said that horse pulled him. And then the guy who owned the Appaloosa had come out and started talking to him. And he said, yeah, he said, if you ever have to, he said, just make sure you get them around the neck before they choke down. He said, they'll float. And that's how the guys out there in Hawaii, before they had, docks and stuff, that's how they were doing it. They were getting everything roped around the neck and then they'd tie them to them rafts. And that's how they were floating them, is kind of the same idea. So we had that one always sticks in my mind, kind of along with roping and choking stuff down, is you can rope one and pull him across the body of water if you have to. Pretty pretty easy. But the old guys had lots of cool tricks to to deal with stuff. If you had a bull that kept dodging in the brush, rope him down and put matchsticks under his eyelids so he can't close his eyes. And if they can't close their eyes, they won't head for the brush. If they
Uh-huh.
scratch their eyes, they say they'll stay out of the brush, no problem. So I've never done that one, but
That's like the first guy that ate an oyster. You got to wonder what the hell he was thinking and what kind of situation he was in. Come up with something like that. But hey, if it works, right?
it worked. It worked. But the stories, we could do a whole podcast just about the stories that come out of this country from years ago.
I'm
And
sure.
it was a different world back then, and people were, they were just surviving, and they were willing to do a lot of stuff to survive. But
Yeah. Yep.
well,
That is pretty cool.
Kind of circling back to the buffalo thing, we find a buffalo skull every once in a while. We'll turn one up out of the dirt somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The historians have told us that there were no buffalo here years ago, but we found enough bones and skulls of them to say, yeah, there was buffalo at one point.
Yeah.
And a
There's a few in here.
couple spots where the Indians would run them off of the cliffs and stuff. And I've never made it down to the one spot. But my great grandpa, who had ran the sheep, he said in that spot, he said, you crawl down there, he said, you'll find buffalo skulls. He said, the Mindy is a big cliff, probably a 700-foot cliff or something. I mean, it's massive. And they said, the Indians would get a buffalo out there and they'd push them off the edge and get them killed. And it could have been a lot of times them, creatures like that in a storm will kind of get to drifting. A big blizzard blows in the high country. They'll kind of just go to drifting, and they could have just ended up off of there. But they were pretty sure that the Indians had run them off there multiple times. So be kind of cool to go check that out someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am envious. That's a beautiful country that you're in up there. I hope I get to ride in it sometime. We'll be doing a clinic this summer northwest of Denver, but we're on the east side of the range there. So usually we go spend a few days in southern Wyoming when we're doing that one. So who knows? Maybe we'll cross it this year and go see some of the western side of things. So anyhow.
Nice.
Oh.
Well, here's a question for you before you go. What
Sure.
do you think of Tom Balding bits? Have you had much experience with him?
Yeah, that's about as good as you can get. I mean, he really is doing a machine shop, so the precision and all of that stuff is in there. I really appreciate that, and so you got functionality and balance is something I'm really concerned with bits, and like I've talked to a lot of makers. I don't want to out anybody, but they get a lot into the engraving and all of that stuff a lot of times, and I've asked a few of them, do you ever like weigh the cheeks to see that the metal that you took away, like this one doesn't weigh 50 grams more than this one does? I have yet to, they've all kind of gone, I never thought to do something like that, and so like with Tom Balding, because that's kind of a machine shop thing, like both of those sides are going to be as close to identical as possible, and so the balance is going to be there and all. So I really try not to endorse anybody or anything, but yeah, you can't go wrong buying one of his bits. I would still say he has some designs and some mouthpieces that I wouldn't use them. He's got some that are really good and really functional, and some that are what I call fishing lure bits. They're kind of designed to look cool and hook a sucker, but they probably don't really belong inside a horse's mouth. But everybody has that, so can't hold it.
That's for sure.
So
yeah, I'm running my normal horses are just using a Balding snaffle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So can't go wrong. Yeah, that'll last you. Well, I've retired a few snaffles, kind of wore them out, but they last me 20 years before they do, so yeah, you get your money's worth out of them for sure.
My boss, he had worn his snaffle into a Balding snaffle, and he sent it back in, and they fixed it.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's still using it. But one of the things, and you would be a guy that would know, but we see guys all over the industry, especially like the cutting horse guys, but even a little farther west, into like the Buckaroo type country, Great
Mhm.
Basin, big open flats. Um, we see these guys that got horses, they're talking about pretty well never using, almost never using the reins. That horse is working off feel. He's working off, feet and one thing that we notice a lot of times is for a working horse in our area, we have to give so many more directions to the horse than most guys are having to give, especially out there in like that big flat country. We're
Mhm.
dodging brush and rock and we're trying to. So a horse gets a little they'll want to get a little harder mouthed. I wouldn't call them hard mouthed, but they don't handle quite like a lot of guys are looking for.
Mhm.
Just because we seem to be having to cue them off this direction just for tree branches or rocks or holes or bogs a lot more. But what would your recommendation be for for doing that, especially when we're coming up, you got long days. So a lot of times a horse is handling pretty good by the start of the day, and by the end of the day, it's kind of just, it's dog tired and ready to go home.
Yeah.
But
It's a little tricky in your spot. I would say a lot of that has to do with terrain. So, like where I'm at on flat ground, it's it's not so much about the bit. It's mostly about my balance and my body and my legs. But
Mhm.
in your country, you're not sitting on flat ground on a flat horse. You might have to be leaning over this way or leaning forward a lot, and that's your neutral position is leaning forward going up this hill or vice versa. And so you're a little bit robbed of the body signals to the horse that would allow me to not have to pull on him so much if I weren't in that sort of terrain. So that there is something to that. um, if I were you, I probably would be riding most everything in a snaffle. Just for the if it slips, I don't want it falling on some shanks and big old spade bit or something and really tear his mouth up or hurt him. And like you say, they're going to get tired in the mountains, and so if I do have to kind of pull on him a little bit, I don't want to do that with some big honking bit in his mouth. But I would try to use the terrain to my advantage as much as I could. Yeah, like if I were in some flatter areas and we're gonna have to take a right between these two boulders or whatever the thing is, try to set that like honestly, horses will get kind of bored and can get resentful in the arena because everything is arbitrary. I decided to turn left here, but there wasn't necessarily a reason for it. And if there was a tree or some other thing, then it kind of gives them a reason to go that way. So I would probably not probably. I absolutely would use the terrain to put as much handle on my horse as I could. Not that you're trail riding, but like I'm a pain in the neck to trail ride with because
Mhm.
I'm heading off here and going between these things and over this log, and I'm constantly messing with my horse and using the terrain to kind of put a better handle on him. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I would go about it. And a big thing is just slow down with your hands. Try to give that cue with your body first, and then
Mhm.
the hands second. And so the horse anticipates. And a lot of times, if you're pulling on them too much, it's probably because you're going to that first rather
Yeah.
than using your legs or your body. And there are like so again, I've ridden some with a rifle in a scabbard, and as much as I use my legs, that actually drives me nuts because I got this big chunk of iron between my leg and my horse, and so I mean that changes things, for better or for worse, and so everything's a trade off. You decide, hey, the rifle's important, I need it here. Well, that has a consequence with your leg
Mhm.
aids and things like that too. So that's that's kind of how I would go about it if you could. So like on that end I might try to swap left and right side or something like that. I don't know if that's practical to do or not, but if you could do that like at lunch, swap it to the other side or whatever, and that way you don't just wind up with a horse that never pays attention to your right leg, um, so that'd be a few things I would think about.
Yeah, we break a lot of colts with packing them because
Uh-huh.
we're trying to get them, and I know a lot of guys don't like that very much, but we're getting them to traverse ground with weight, and it's a weight that is not, it might be kind of valuable, but it's not a person valuable. And if
Hmm.
you have a blow up, and I hear lots of guys, um, I've had people tell me, well, I like them. I like them to buck. I like them rank. Well, I mean, that's all right in Nebraska. But, here, if you're coming off, you're probably landing on a rock or a dead fall tree, or, that horse is on a hillside and it's not going to be good when you have that thing happen. So a lot of times our breaking method is usually packing. Get a horse, and that helps us along too, because we got so much stuff to do, it seems like. Getting it useful as soon as possible and
Hmm.
teaching it as you go seems to be pretty helpful. But
Yeah.
I do notice them being a little um, not very not very responsive at first, especially after they've had a halter on and been led for a long time. A lot of colts, they don't really think they need to, they just want to follow the other horse, leave them alone, and
Yeah.
they'll be fine. So that's kind of a downside to packing them like we do. But everybody's got something that works for them, and that one seems to get us some pretty good stable horses by the time we crawl on them.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do in the situation that you're in. If I were in your situation, I would probably do that exactly the same way. Um,
Yeah.
and it's got its advantages and it's got its disadvantages. And so if they get a little numb from kind of being drugged, then that's just what you got to contend with. But if he's not bucking you off, I'd probably make that trade. you know. Yeah, I've never seen an advantage in a horse that wants to buck. That's you know,
I will say, I rode Ranch Bronc for a while, and I mean, they're fun. That's
mhm.
just adrenaline, absolutely. But the difference between the rodeo arena and now, you look at some of the places in my videos, you're thinking, if a horse breaks in two here, you're just
Yeah.
a go. If we're going over that trail, it's not going to be a good day. You're looking down onto a lake down there thinking, man, one jump and there I'd be. It'd be,
Or even they could break a leg or something, and even though you rode him out, you
yep,
you rode out the buck, you can't ride him out. Now you got to walk 20 miles to get the hell out of there. Yeah, there's
now you're in trouble.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I rode bulls for years, and then you get a family and people depend on you, and fun isn't, it's not quite the same. Now you got to think of the consequences of your actions a little differently, and yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times we'll pack them horses out. We'll pack like a colt out and make her pack salt all day. And at the farthest, they're as tired as they're going to get. You're, you've gone maybe 10, 20 miles in that direction. Then we'll swap saddles and
mhm.
we'll ride the pack horse and pack the riding horse. And that works
Yep.
pretty well, especially if you have somebody else that maybe even snub you the first time on, or whatever you need to do, lead your horse out with the pack saddle on while you ride and
Mhm.
deal with the colt. But so that it worked well for us in our
Yeah.
situation.
I don't
But
mind. I will say, like I see, there was a video. I'm sure you've seen it that went viral 2 months ago or something of the guy that tied a hind leg up on the colt and got on him and all. And to me, I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. I want to iron out the wrinkles where he's okay with me getting on him and we don't have any problems. And um, I've seen too many of those kind of things. Like the hardest horses I've ever had to catch are the ones that were roped a bunch. And once you've roped that sucker for a month, then just walking up and putting a halter on him gets to be a whole hell of a lot harder. And so I would rather take a little extra time on the front end and iron those wrinkles out rather than kind of get by for a while. And now fixing it's going to be a whole lot more time consuming and difficult. But, I mean, again, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I've been there too. So
A lot of times, like my boss says, if a horse will never start bucking if you don't let him. So there's times you might say, okay, we haven't gone 20 miles wasn't enough. We haven't calmed him down. A horse is going to be a lot spookier when he's fresh. Stuff that's a problem when he's fresh is not going to be a problem. A lot of it's not going to be a problem when he's worn out. But there's times you say, okay, it's time to step back a little bit. I did see that video. The guy was snubbed up, had one foot tied up. And I thought, well, it's probably not something I would do. But he's
yeah,
also,
and I'm sure he was a hand. I'm not saying he didn't have any business doing that or whatever, but most people sure as hell don't.
well, he was in some pretty open country. He was in a place he could fight him pretty good. But a lot of what we hear about as somebody really being a bronc stomper and what is considered a bronc stomper today are two different things. Some of these guys riding the horses that they were riding 100 years ago, they might make 3-4 bronc rides a day.
Yeah.
That was just par for the course. It might have been every time they got on. It might have been, we still have the old cinch hooks from these guys who they had their horse it was one of their good horses. They still wouldn't reach under it to tighten the cinch. Stuff has come a long ways.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Breeding has improved things a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like they said here and in this area, they said people were kind of inadvertently breeding bucking stock. Said that horse was too rough to ride. Nobody could ride him. We'll throw him in the brood pen or her, make it good for something, and we'll ride the gentler one. Then they started figuring out, oh, wait a second. Maybe that trait's not what we want to breed into everything. But
I've seen it just in my career, 30 years, I've seen a significant difference in the genetics and stuff like that. Like some of the old cutting horse lines, the little Peppies, Mr. Sam Peppies, Smart Little Lenas, all of those horses would buck your ass off. Like they were I remember there was a Smart Little Lena filly that I started her, and she was pretty darn tough. And then the first time I brought her in the arena around cattle, she bucked for an hour. For an hour. I mean, it was just like she would go, I'd get her settled down and she'd go off again. And for an hour, I thought she was going to like have a heart attack and die in the arena before she finally like settled down. And I was done for the day like that. A bronc ride for 10 seconds is one thing, but an hour, that you got nothing left, So, we don't have those kind of bloodlines anymore. They're way, but even the Hancock stuff in your part of the world, people aren't riding Hancocks anymore. They're riding 8 generations of dilution of what a Hancock was. But yeah, that was a whole different deal.
I get that one a lot. You're riding them Hancocks. Them Hancocks are pretty rough. And we have, a lot of our horses are not going to be pet gentle. They don't, I guess the easiest way to say it is our horses are still horses. They don't rely on people. They don't enjoy people. It's kind of work. It's what they're up to. They're going to work every day. But we've had really good luck with some Hancock stuff. Every once in a while, you'll have one that's just kid friendly. Most of them are steady. They're not going to hurt nobody. But they might not be like a big dog, and that's fine because I don't want a big dog. I'm not trying to pet a dog, but we've had very good luck with some of our Hancocks, and that's what I've thought is, well, Joe Hancock's been dead for how long? There's so many bred in now. There's some people that are double breeding Hancocks, and I've heard they can get a little sporting having some double bred stuff, but we've had very good luck with them. My boss, one of our neighbors had a horse. They said she was great. Had a mare that everybody liked, and she had a foal, and they said they latched onto her thinking this was going to be the next wonder horse, And they said that thing bucked and bucked, and they couldn't ever get her to stop. They said the kid was out here, Keith, and one of the guys that was working with him when they were young decided that they was going to ride it. I think this guy's name was Steve. Steve had stepped on. He said he rode her so long and she was bucking so hard that his nose started to bleed from the concussion. And finally, she was bucking down the fence that's still in our corral, and it's about a 6-foot fence. If you watch some of my videos, it's just that slab fence that's down there. And she was bucking down it high and hard enough that one of the bucks, she just landed on the other side of the fence. She had cleared like that 6-foot fence. And at the time,
Mm-hmm.
there's little stand aspens, and she run down there and swiped Steve off in a bunch of aspens. And they said they never got her to be rideable. They ended up selling her to a rodeo. But just some things got a mind, and some things got a mind to buck, I guess.
Yeah. And I have had some pretty notable, like very gentle, raised in someone's backyard, but when it came time to ride them, like, oh my God, that they were rank. So that's not always there's a notion now too in my business that if one ever bucks, you did something wrong. And every time I hear somebody say that, I'm like, let me introduce you to some genetics that I guarantee you can do groundwork for 6 months if you want to. They're going to buck. There's just no two ways about it sometimes. But it
Yeah.
sounds good to say stuff like that anyway.
Yeah, there's that idea. Ours have always been pretty good, like my boss says. If you never get them to start bucking, they might not. And with some horses, I guarantee, like you're saying, that ain't going to work. There's some that you're going to have to iron that out. Most of ours are pretty good. My buddy Oliver, he had picked up one that we had been up here. Keith's daughter had raised it on the ranch down there in Gunnison, and that thing was gentle as could be on the ground. Nice horse, and he said she was that way. Soon as you try to do anything on top of her, it was game over. She's a
Mm-hmm.
bucker. And he said, for being such a gentle horse, he had said to me a couple times, he said, she's so gentle. He said, I think I'm going to find something that's going to be wild about her. And that was it. He tried getting on her, and then he tried packing her, and he's a pretty good, he's a pretty good horseman. And she got away from him one day because she was nuts leading up.
Mm-hmm.
He's packing, and she got away in a big park. He said she was just making laps in that thing. And he was finally able to ride up and kind of do a pickup, look like a rodeo pickup man, and catch her and get her back caught. But that is worse than an all-out buck is a runaway. There's,
Yeah.
you know, you're gonna come to trees, rocks, a fence, something.
So,
And a runaway, now you gotta beg the question, step off or keep going with it. And Oris,
or they just slip
they
and go down. They ain't a good way to handle that. You being underneath a horse on the ground is never going to be a good thing. Yeah.
Oris, he stepped on one out here and it run away with him when he was young. This probably would have been about 1925, I'd reckon, 1920. And she was about to run through a fence down there, and he decided it was time to get off. And when he stepped off, they said it broke his shin just above his ankle, drove the bone out through the side of his leg and into the ground. And so then, of course, they had to get an old car and drive probably half a day to the nearest doctor's office to get his leg reset. But yeah,
Yeah.
been pretty rough.
Well, we've got a podcast you might want to go back and listen to is with a lady named Jillian Higgins. I'll send you a link to it later on, but she's an anatomy expert in Britain. And
Okay.
one of the things they're finding as they're doing a lot of these autopsies on problem horses and things like that is that up to about 30% of horses, they will find an anatomical anomaly. So like they'll have an extra vertebra or be missing one or have a floating rib where they shouldn't or something like that. And in fact, her personal horse, it's a big gray horse named Freddie that died. She had him for 25 years. He's been all over the world. God knows how many vets and all have had their hands on him and all this stuff. And she's used him. He's on the cover of all of her books and stuff. Well, when he died, she came to find out he had one of the dorsal processes on his lumbar spine. So that's the bone sticking up that we would see as the backbone. It's supposed to be leaning forward, and on the 6th lumbar vertebrae, it was leaning back. So this horse that she had and a world-renowned anatomical expert's personal horse, had one of these anomalies, and she didn't know it, and nobody else that had put hands on it knew it all these years. So you never know where that gentleman that's bucking has actually got a rib that's not attached that should be, and the saddle is hurting, or now we've got like these 5-panel, now 6-panel genetic tests for HERDA and PSSM and some of these other conditions that can cause them pain. So you never know when something like that is at play, and that stuff's genetic too. So you got that family of bucking horses. Well, it could be a pain thing with this particular line, because they have the same flaw in their back or whatever. So you never know.
Yeah. Well, our neighbor, he had come up here, he had some calf, something was wrong with a calf, it's not uncommon for us to have a calf born with some sort of anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all been talking about that because he's wondering why are we seeing so much of this in cattle? And we all said, I bet if you took 500, had 500 horses dropping foals every year, you'd probably see a lot of anomalies there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see it in cows, don't think about it so much in other things, but stuff happens,
Yeah.
Stuff kind of weird.
Absolutely.
But,
Well, Tucker, it's getting pretty late. I had better let you go and get to bed, but I really enjoyed chatting with you, man. I hope we get to maybe meet up and ride together, shoot some guns or something somewhere down the road, share a ptarmigan or ptarmigan or something. Who the hell put the P in the front of that word? It just doesn't make any sense. But
ptarmigan, I guess.
They're like a grouse, is that right? Are they in that family or okay?
Grouse is some kind. We have a lot of blue grouse, but these things live way up there in the above tree line, so above 11.7, live on the tundra, and they're pretty cool. They turn white in the winter. They're brown all summer, turn white in the winter like a jackrabbit.
And they eat pretty good?
No, I wouldn't say they eat pretty good. No.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a delicacy you had for supper. It was just something to fill you up.
It was something to fill us up. I've not had one, but I'm always just cooking them over a fire. They dry out really fast. They're like a dark red meat, kind of like goose, like Canadian goose. So I've experimented with them and I've gotten it a little better, but they do dry fast. By the time you got one cooked over a fire, it's kind of like jerky. So wrapping them in tin foil. A lot of times in the pack horse, we'll try to take a little tin foil. That works pretty well. Little tin foil help them stay moist.
Yeah. A little bear grease on top or something.
Yeah. But you have to come out, check this country out. We'll surely meet up someday.
Well, that sounds good. When we make our trip to Colorado this summer, I'll send you a text or something, and we'll see if it works out. We'll check it out. So,
all right. Well, sounds good.
All right, man. Well, I certainly appreciate your time, and we'll have links, everybody, to Tucker's social media. You can check him out on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And are you on? You do TikTok and that stuff too? I'm not on any of those, but
I'm barely on them. But yes, I am on them.
Okay.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.